essentially was the European debt deal. And with me in the studio now is Vicky Pryce. Give us an update on what you think's going on with this vote.
Well, there's quite a lot of no's, so I think it's going to be very, very tight. But some people, because I was listening to the names, who had been quite against Papandreou before, have voted yes. So, the odd person. So it suggests to me that maybe he can just hang on, from his own party, that is.
And he's made it clear that he's not necessarily insisting on staying in charge. So give us an idea of who might take over and who would be a good bet to lead this national unity government.
There have been a number of names that have been suggested, but the one that seems to be most popular, because he's more of a technocrat, is George Papandreou. He's the actual, he used to be deputy head of the European Central Bank. So he's well known, he's well respected, he was a sort of academic for a while and so on. So I mean, he's the sort of person who they think might be able to get the parties to work together in a sort of non-partisan way. So I think he'd be a good one. I think the population would like that too, because they're dying to have technocrats run the government.
And just going to broaden this out, I mean, it's been interesting that within Europe, they've suddenly, after the kind of the denial, you know, Greece is going to stay in the euro, everything's going to be fine, they are now actually openly talking about what might happen if Greece did leave. And it sounds from what they've come up with here that that's not the initial plan. But it's interesting, isn't it?
Well, I think the population has suddenly realised, and so have the various deputies, that is the members of Parliament in Greece, that the alternative to them accepting the plan could well be having to leave the Eurozone, which they hadn't bargained for at all. I know people have been talking about this for a while, it's a little sort of threat, but it was really only when everyone realised that actually this was a serious threat, and the Europeans actually played it rather cleverly, saying, you know, you have to say that you're really in favour of the Eurozone, otherwise we're not going to give you the money that you need, that people are beginning to think that maybe we should be thinking a bit more seriously about accepting the plan. Having said that, there are loads of no's. So it doesn't look as if they've all realised, or they may have realised it, but they're still looking for some political advantage. So clearly hoping that if there is a snap election of sorts, that the New Democracy might win.
And on that issue of snap elections, clearly Papandreou was saying they would be catastrophic, but we've had Antonis Samaras saying that's what he wants.
Well, yes. Yes, because he perceives that, of course, PASOK will do, the Socialist Party, will do quite badly, particularly because the Prime Minister right now is so unpopular. And I would be very surprised if he is replaced by Venizelos, who's his finance minister, whether he will be any more popular, frankly.
I mean, but if they decide to vote against Papandreou now, and say Samaras has his way and they get the snap elections, could they still salvage the debt deal that's been done with Europe, or are they then actually not going to want to kind of, you know, they're going to say to the electorate, actually, we don't want the deal anymore? What's your impression of that?
Well, they could, because Samaras has actually come in favour of staying within the Eurozone. So he may be voting now against Papandreou, but actually I think the opposition has realised that they actually need to vote for the deal, if you like. What they're doing right now is they're not voting for a government of national unity. It doesn't mean they're not going to vote for the deal, but between now and when the elections are held, and then we know what's actually the result of it is, there's going to be huge uncertainty there, and I think the Greeks are just not going to be able to like that at all, and they will blame the politicians for getting them to this position, so they might punish Samaras as well.
And if this all kind of unravels and they don't get this national unity government, and we get the sort of a situation where there are elections and you say prolonged period of uncertainty, what is the knock-on effect to other European countries like Italy, say?
Well, we've seen what's going on with the coalition there, of course. I mean, a real problem. And of course we're going to see, well, we've seen concerns, of course, about a number of other countries which are going to have difficulty sticking to some of the austerity measures that they've got. I mean, the real problem with Europe, as we know, is economic, really. I mean, yes, there's political indecision and so on, but Europe is not growing. If Europe was growing, as it used to do for a while anyway, just before the financial crisis, then these problems wouldn't be there. I mean, Italy's just, has seen 10 years of practically no growth at all, and with that, it can't actually finance its debt. And of course, costs of raising funds in Europe, and look what's going on in Italy, have increased very substantially. So I think we're going to see a domino effect.
And also, just to go back to that issue of growth within Greece itself, is there enough within the plan and the kind of the debt deal to tackle that issue of growth? Because I mean, admittedly, there are austerity measures and cuts, but is there enough to tackle growth?
I think that's the problem. I think that's what's been worrying everybody, and that's why there are all these protests, frankly, because we're now expecting Greece to see possibly 5.5% reduction in GDP, in output this year. It's likely not to be repeated, not exactly the same numbers, but a decline repeated again next year, whereas before one was hoping that it might be stagnant or possibly some little growth. Now we're likely to see a decline again. And there isn't anything that is short-term pro-growth in the plan. What there is longer-term reforms, which are absolutely essential to allow for growth again. The only good thing about it is, of course, the decline, the cut in the debt mountain that we're there, but that in itself isn't going to happen immediately. So I think certainly short-term, there isn't much hope there for the Greeks.
OK, Vicky Pryce, thank you very much indeed for the time being, and we'll come back to you when we get more on this vote that's going on there at the moment.